everyone, and welcome. Some of the stories we have for you right now. Stunning resignation. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador announces he is stepping down.
I've asked the party to begin a leadership race to replace him.
Why Andrew Furey is the second provincial premier to leave politics in just days.
To reopen the free trade agreement with the U.S.
Dissecting the debate, the highs and lows, as Liberal leadership hopefuls prepare for round two.
A lot of these ultra-processed products, they're abundant, they're cheap.
Some processed food for thought and a recipe for serious health risks.
You can cut your commute at least in half, if not more.
Plus, steering into the future with some high-flying technology.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Some surprising news out of Newfoundland and Labrador today with the sudden resignation of Liberal Premier Andrew Furey. The 49-year-old announcing he is stepping down after nearly 5 years in the top job.
The time has come for me to return to my family and to the job that I love in the operating room, where I will continue to serve the people of this province.
The orthopedic surgeon was seen by some as a possible future contender on the federal scene. Okay, it is time for us to bring in CTV Atlantic Chief News Anchor Todd Battis, a man familiar to CTV News viewers. Hi, nice to talk to you again, Todd.
Hi, Sandy. Good to see you as always.
All right, let's talk about Andrew Furey's resignation. Now, it seemed to come completely out of the blue. Any hints before today that he was going to step down?
Look, if you told me that he was making a statement this afternoon, I would have thought, as many others would have as well, that he was going to call an election. An election is slated for this year in Newfoundland and Labrador, and Premier Furey had a lot to be very pleased about. I mean, his approval ratings were high. He just brokered a very big deal with Quebec over hydro coming out of Labrador. So the sense is that things were really rolling his way. I think this would come as a big surprise to many people.
So we have to take him at his word that he wants to go back to his love, which is being an orthopedic surgeon. But talk to us, Todd, about the fact that PEI Premier Dennis King resigns last week, and now Newfoundland's Premier. Coincidence? I mean, what's going on? Is there any significance in both stepping down one after the other this way?
Well, you know, if you live here on the East Coast, Sandy, you could develop a bit of a complex. You've lost 2 premiers of 4 in Atlantic Canada in the past week. So, you know, people will naturally be thinking, okay, does this have anything to do with impending tariffs? Is that a sign that the economy will be really devastated? But I think you have to look at each of these on their own merits. And in terms of Premier Furey, you know, he did lay a bit of a hint when he was talking this afternoon to reporters. He said, if I thought that we could wrap up this situation with tariffs in 4 days, in 4 weeks, well, maybe I would have stayed. But this is going to be 4 years under Donald Trump. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be erratic. And it's time for someone else to be at the helm and to deal with that, and putting it in words that anyone in healthcare and a surgeon like he is would understand. He equated the job to a very long shift at a hospital. He said, you're always on as your premier, and it was becoming a little much.
All right, Todd, thank you for this. Well, last night we watched the opening face-off in the Liberal leadership contest with the debate in French, dominated also by talk of Donald Trump's tariff threats. A first real look at 4 rivals for the same job who actually seemed quite chummy on stage. Time for us to bring in CTV senior political correspondent Mike Couture, who joins us from the studio where tonight's debate will take place. Okay, Mike, I saw them as a friendly bunch. They were helpful to each other. They were considerate. Was that your takeaway as well?
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, I think this is typical of Liberal leadership debates, or leadership debates for that matter, because they're trying to make sure that they don't sow too much division within the party because they need to emerge from this united. They really want to make sure that coming out of this, they are strong and they are continuing to be together because, as we know, an election could be called at almost any time after March the 9th. So expect the same type of thing tonight, where it will be more friendly than feisty, Sandy.
Okay, now talk to us about the highlights yesterday. What jumped out at you?
Yeah, I think there were more lowlights, and one was comical, the other one was a little more concerning. The comical one was, of course, when they were asked by the moderator if they knew what a weekly cost of groceries was for a family of 4. It was interesting because Frank Bayless had said, look, he isn't allowed to do the groceries in his home. That is up to his wife. And then you had Karina Gould and Christopher Freeland jump in with 2 answers, saying it was about $200 to $250. And Freeland even saying that, hey, look, I can do better than my husband because I save more money. Mark Carney was kind of shut out of that one, but he shone for the wrong reason a little later on. It was during a discussion about Canada's role in helping solve the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And he had said, because there was a lively discussion on stage, that he was in agreement with Hamas. And it was a clear misstep that then Christopher Freeland jumped in to try and help him with. And afterwards, Carney made it clear. He says he was not in agreement with Hamas, but in agreement with all positions on the stage that they are against Hamas. But still, it may cost him going forward, Sandy.
Okay. Mike, you know, did anyone come away a clear front runner? Can you say that at this point?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because I think when you consider where Carney was going into this, he may have lost a bit of standing. But I think tonight will be the real test for all of them, looking to see if anybody is maybe going to take the gloves off or at least punch a little bit harder than they did last night.
Okay, Mike, as always, thank you for this. Now, who best to deal with Donald Trump? That is the question, as the U.S. president again signaled the U.S. will go ahead with those first punishing tariffs a week from today. And this despite a Team Canada effort to stave them off. CTV's Judy Trin is here now. And Judy, where does it stand and how will Canada be responding?
Sandy, it appears Donald Trump's mind is set, and now Russia may help him get through this trade war he's about to launch.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly.
That means on March 4th, the U.S. will slap 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico. Oil and gas products will face 10% tariffs. The softwood lumber industry says it's bracing for the worst.
That 25% that he's proposing on our products is on top of a softwood lumber duty, which we're already paying at 14.5%. So our industry is looking close to a 40% price on our products that'll be sitting on the shelves down in the United States.
This comes as Canada's public safety minister and fentanyl czar are in Washington to update the Trump administration on new border security measures. The tariffs will drive up prices for consumers on both sides of the border. But the United States could get help from Moscow to fight their trade war. Vladimir Putin is offering to sell the U.S. 2 million tons of aluminum and provide critical minerals if the U.S. lifts its sanctions against Russia for its illegal invasion of Ukraine. The Financial Times is also reporting that Trump's senior trade advisor, Peter Navarro, has suggested removing Canada from the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance to put pressure on Canada.
It is a surprising comment considering the contribution of Canada to the Five Eyes Alliance, not only today, but also in the past, and I would even say in the future.
But Navarro is denying the report.
That was just crazy stuff. We would never, ever jeopardize our national security, ever, with allies like Canada.
Navarro may deny that he's floating the idea, but what is undeniable is that Trump has been threatening to turn Canada into the 51st state for 3 months now, and close advisors say he wants to do it in this term while he's in power. Sandy.
All right, Judy, thank you. A close call at a Chicago airport this morning after a Southwest Airlines jet narrowly avoided colliding with a private jet. Now watch as the Southwest aircraft had to abort landing after the smaller aircraft crossed the runway in violation of instructions. The pair was less than a kilometer apart. This is the latest in a string of aviation incidents. A trial against 4 suspected Hamas members who allegedly plotted attacks in Europe began in Berlin today. The men are accused of organizing weapons for attacks against Jewish targets across the continent. And Pope Francis remains in hospital in critical condition, but is well enough now to work from his bed and meet with Vatican officials as he recovers from double pneumonia. Well, a hard few weeks in Washington for federal employees navigating the escalating chaos imposed by Elon Musk as he trims staff and issues ultimatums. This morning, 21 longtime federal employees resigned in protest, saying they are not comfortable with Musk's directives and ultimatums. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon is here with us now. Joy, what is the significance of today's en masse resignation?
Sandy, it's enough to make your head spin. Remember when billionaire Elon Musk took a chainsaw saying he's going after government agencies to ferret out waste and fraud? Well, it has created nothing but chaos and confusion. Today, those 21 federal technology staffers just resigned as part of a mass protest. They are refusing to, quote, use their technical skills to compromise or dismantle what they call critical public services. Now, this as thousands of federal workers are in limbo after being told by Musk in an email to explain what they did last week or lose their jobs. President Donald Trump called it genius. Here's what the White House press secretary had to say.
All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayer's dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week. That is all we are asking for.
Okay, Joy, as you said, Musk issued an ultimatum, then a second one to workers in which he said, as you said, tell us what you're doing or you're done. Not going over well, is it?
No, there are agencies like the FBI, the CIA, the Pentagon, and the Justice Department who told its workers not to comply. Overnight, Musk posted another ultimatum to 2 million federal workers to justify their jobs, saying failure to respond a second time will result in termination. Sandy?
All right, Joy, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you. Well, many today are calling the U.S. vote against a UN resolution condemning Russia for the war in Ukraine a diplomatic fiasco. The American president also declined to call Vladimir Putin a dictator, a word he uses easily to describe Ukraine's president. The concern in Kyiv is that Trump wants to end the war, but not protect Ukraine. CTV's Adrian Gobriel is in Kyiv, where he met with Canadians and Ukrainians whose stories serve as a reminder of what's at stake.
The hum of air raid sirens and the pounding drum of war have reverberated across Ukraine for 3 years and counting. In search of refuge, some young Ukrainians like 14-year-old Alexandra Antonenko have turned to music.
It's comforting me and I'm like going to another world. The problems in the world doesn't bother me.
On February 24th, 2022, when she was just 11 years old, Alexandra and her mother were forced to leave their hometown of Kharkiv. Her father, Dmitry Antonenko, stayed behind.
He joined military the first day.
6 months later, mother and daughter received an early morning phone call from the military.
And I had to call my grandma and tell her that her son is dead, and it was like the worst conversation I've ever had.
Stories of sacrifice can be found across Ukraine.
This is our reality. It's not great, but we're going to get through this.
Canadian-Ukrainian Patricia Marushchuk left her family in Winnipeg nearly 3 years ago to help lead an NGO.
What's that sacrifice been like for you?
I've missed out on a lot with my family. I feel some guilt on that, but they're very supportive.
The mother of two works with Finn Church Aid. Recently, they've been helping build bomb shelters in schools, even assisting in turning this underground subway platform into a classroom.
There's 5 schools that have been built inside the subway stations in Kharkiv. Yeah, kids want to go to school.
Though all the resilience and humanity Ukraine can summon doesn't erase the pain of sacrifice.
I still miss him. I see him in my dreams. All I have to say is thank you and I love you.
Alexandra's father is one of hundreds of thousands of soldiers who've been killed on both sides of this conflict. The UN believes that the innocent lives of more than 12,600 men, women, and children have been stolen since the Russian invasion began. Sandy.
All right, Adrian and Keith. Thanks, Adrian. We learned today about the RCMP rescue of 5 people attempting to cross illegally into Quebec after a tip from U.S. Border Services. A suspected smuggler and driver were arrested after RCMP used a Black Hawk helicopter during the 8-hour operation. Coming up after the break, all the ingredients for a growing health crisis.
50% of our calories come from these ultra-processed foods.
Biting into the consequences of eating processed foods. We're learning more about just how bad ultra-processed foods are for your health. A study from the University of Montreal ties these foods to more than a third of heart and stroke deaths in Canada. CTV's Heather Wright has more on the findings and what you need to know. Heather.
Well, Sandy, Canadians consume a lot of ultra-processed foods. In fact, more than 40% of the total calorie intake for Canadians over the age of 20 are UPFs. Now, we know these foods, things like chicken nuggets, chips, soda, are not good for us, but a new study is showing not only are they unhealthy, but they are actually deadly. New research from the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada found roughly 37% of all new coronary heart disease and stroke cases are related to the consumption of ultra-processed foods. And 38% of all deaths from these diseases can be blamed on UPFs.
So we know that these products are not of a good nutritional quality. We know that they're harmful to health. This study shows how much they're harmful.
Products that fall into the ultra-processed category often have little nutritional value and include many added ingredients, often with names that are difficult to pronounce. They are typically high in sugar or sodium or saturated fat, and experts say they are purposefully designed to be overconsumed.
They have different characteristics that makes you eat more and more, so you will overconsume them compared to real food.
Experts say part of the problem with ultra-processed foods is that they are cheap, they are accessible, and they are convenient. Now, this study is also suggesting if we made real food more accessible, it could lead to a reduction in deaths. In fact, if Canadians reduce their intake of UPFs by half, it could lead to more than 45,000 fewer cases of cardiovascular disease a year and more than 8,000 fewer deaths. Sandy.
Good advice, Heather. Thank you. After the break, still digging out. The marathon snow cleanup as parts of the country brace for more wild weather. The mayor of Toronto is calling out the city for its slow snow clearing efforts.
This current state of removal operations, particularly in the residential sidewalk, is just totally unacceptable.
Olivia Chow's demanding a full review after the city saw more than 50 centimeters of snow in back-to-back snowstorms. She says many struggle to move through sidewalks and that crews need to do better. And more snow is on the way for some regions. In fact, the weather across this country is all over the map, from extreme cold to flooding concerns. It's going to be a wild ride this week. Chief Meteorologist for your morning, Kelsey McEwen. Now, in the dramatic changes, what's it looking like, Kelsey?
Very changeable. Those are the two words you need to remember as we go through the next couple of weeks, as we go from meteorological winter, wrapping up at the end of February, kicking off meteorological spring on March 1st. Astronomical spring starting a little bit later on in the month on March 20th. The melt is the big thing happening in Ontario and parts of southern Quebec as temperatures have been very mild. That trend continues today through the next 3 with a slight drop, but still it is pretty mild. And so obviously that snow is melting. There is more precipitation on the way Wednesday evening, far southwest Ontario. That kind of kicks off a transition in the forecast where we start to see a much snowier end to the week with more accumulation taking us through Thursday, potentially into Friday, and then even into the weekend as well. We see another weather system moving in. Atlantic Canada, you're prepping for a weather system of your own coming in off the Atlantic. This prompts a real mess through the morning on Wednesday for our maritime provinces. Newfoundland and Labrador, heavy snow on the West Coast, heavy rain for eastern communities, rain that's falling on either partially or fully frozen ground, flooding a big concern there. And then we slide over to Western Canada. We're seeing a very warm, dry forecast in comparison to just a couple of weeks ago. We were talking wind chill near -50 in some communities, above zero today. Really watching southern Alberta for drought conditions. March typically is the snowiest month of winter in southern Alberta, but unfortunately in the extended forecast, that particular region stays dry. Back to you.
All right, Kelsey, thank you. After the break, taking to the skies to tackle traffic, navigating the technology that's shifting the future of driving. And yes, that is a car. You know the expression, what if cars could fly? Well, the idea has been part of science fiction lore for decades, and cartoons as well. Remember the Jetsons? Now it's a reality, and not because of Elon Musk this time. CTV's John Vennavally-Rao wanted this assignment. Okay, John, tell us more. Will this story fly?
Well, it may be pie in the sky, but when it comes to beating traffic and gridlock, according to one California company, things are looking up.
Flying cars have long been the stuff of sci-fi movies, from Blade Runner. Yeah, but I thought we were flying. Precisely. To Back to the Future. But could this turn Hollywood hype into highway reality?
For people who see it for the first time, it's like first you see it in kind of science fiction movies, you read about it, and now you actually see it in person. So that's a wow effect.
The Silicon Valley startup behind it, hoping to lift imaginations, showing its flying car prototype actually taking off and flying for about 30 seconds. The company's CEO boldly comparing it to the Wright brothers' first flight.
In a sense that it proves to the humanity that the new mode of transportation is possible.
Aleph Aeronautics has been working on this for about 3 years, until recently only shown off at car shows firmly on the ground, and taking to the skies only in computer animation, but now demonstrating it to the media, though with major restrictions. Reporters couldn't get up close or peek inside.
It raises a lot of questions. So I'm wondering, how real is this?
Early adopters sure hope it's real. The company says it's secured more than 3,000 pre-orders. The cost to buy, $430,000. It's not alone in the race to the skies. More than 200 companies are working on flying taxis and cars, though most look like helicopters, which makes this stand out.
We all want to be able to fly over the traffic instead of in the traffic. We want to be able to get to our destinations quicker.
The company has soaring dreams of solving traffic.
And it wants to start production next year, but plenty are still grounded in skepticism. Sandy.
For sure. Okay, John, thank you. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Be sure to join Omar later tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. Your local CTV News is coming up. Bye for now.